Welcome to Gold Silver Pros.
Hey everybody, we're recording this a little bit ahead of time, but this is your Thanksgiving Day edition 2023 Gold Silver Pros broadcast that will occur on November 23rd, 2023. Welcome everybody to the program. I'm recording this ahead of time, so don't worry, I'm not working on Thanksgiving. I am having a wonderful Thanksgiving dinner at about the time that this comes out with my son, and we'll be hanging out with some friends and family this weekend and really just enjoying the week. And then, of course, the store will be open again on Friday and Saturday as per usual hours. I wanted to do sort of a special edition Thanksgiving. I didn't want to do anything about data or really markets in particular. I wanted to do something more having to do with Thanksgiving. And I'm going to relate to you some stories of my father's past. Anybody that's been watching this program for any length of time knows my father was in the 7th Naval Battalion, was part of D-Day, was part of World War II. And I'm going to relate to you some of the experiences that he had more on the personal side from letters that I have dating back to, the 40s when this was occurring. It's about 80 years old. And the letters, I was reading a bunch of them the last couple of weeks. And I wanted to actually read a letter on the air and thought it'd be very impactful. And then, but there's a lot of personal stuff in there. So instead of that, I'm just going to share stories. But I think it'll be very informative and interesting what those guys were thinking about at that time, because I think we're about to hit some parallels with that time here in the 2020s, especially as we get to the middle of this decade. And I have a couple of special announcements. We're expanding our product line, so I'm going to talk about that. We actually, in the store, have already expanded our product line. I just don't have it all up on the online store yet. I've been a little bit behind in getting some of that, but it's going to be up by the time you see this video. We're going to have a couple of new product lines up for you, and we're going to expand into another product line here before too long in the next couple of weeks. So we've got a lot of expansion going on. We're really excited about that. But here we go. As I was reading through the letters of my dad, specifically the letters that were written to him by his family when he was over there, of course, a lot of poignant stuff is being said, but more than not, what it is people trying to lead a normal life in very abnormal times, but also realizing that their son had gone off to war and they had nothing to complain about based upon what he was going through. One of the things that I do about this time of year every year, because my dad was in the war, was to watch Band of Brothers, which is a Spielberg, Tom Hanks production that came out on HBO. It usually plays again around this time of year every year. It'll come out on several channels. And I also have like the box set. So I'll watch Band of Brothers. It helps me kind of get closer to my dad because I didn't really know him because he died when I was young. I only know him through story and the stories that my family has told me, stories that I've read about the war in those times, stories I've read about what the soldiers went through, and of course, like Band of Brothers, which I think is actually a really good depiction of what happened during those times. I think it follows the 101st Airborne, but basically it's indicative of what, all the troops and all the people went through, on the American side and the British side during that time. So anyway, I'm reading through some of these stories and it's funny listening to what people went through and then saying, it's not funny, but it's funny in that, or interesting in that I think that we're going to see very similar things occur here in the future. And I guess it's a bit funny that things repeat. Or at least rhyme. History kind of repeats in many ways. So one of the stories, his mother had written him a letter and was talking about, wanting to buy herself some clothes. So she went into town and it was for a special event that they were having leading up to the holidays. She wanted to look really nice. And they went in town and they couldn't find her limit for buying, a nice pair of pants and slacks was $7. And that's all that they could afford back then. Obviously, they've just gone through a depression. They were in war times. There was rationing. And she couldn't find one for $7. She had to pay $9. And so she wasn't able then to buy the shirt that she wanted. She had to go to a different location and buy a cheaper, shirt to put an outfit together. And she was relating that experience going, it used to be that we lived in good times and we could kind of afford what we wanted. But people back then had to sort of take what they could get, and people were buying on the low end everything that they could just to make ends meet. And then she went on to talk about it was Christmas time. It was December, I want to say 1943. And she was talking about how she baked a pie, and she hadn't baked a pie in a long time because of rationing. She had finally, it had been like over a year, she had gotten the ingredients to actually make a pie and baked a pie. She said, I hadn't baked it in so long, I thought I was going to burn it. but I was able to do it, and how everybody, when they came around the table, celebrated the fact that they had a pie, that for the first time in a year, they could actually eat a pie together as a family. And she had lucked into getting 2 chickens for, the meal. And that, everybody, all the family went to her house because she had chickens and pie. The things that we take for granted, we can run down to Costco or run down to our grocery store and get, relatively cheaply. They savored, and they understood how valuable and important that was, because a lot of people during those times didn't have those things. And it's funny, a letter from one of my dad's friends, he didn't go to the war. I guess he wasn't qualified to go to the war, so he stayed home and working a lot of hours in a factory, that type of job. It's like, we went out on a double date, and he said, but we didn't have any money. So we just took the girls walking around town. They couldn't even go to a restaurant or a movie. I mean, they had no money to speak of. And he said, it was, the girls went and gossiped and did their thing. The guys did their thing. It's like, it wasn't a normal day. What would you expect? But they didn't have any money. So they just kind of walked around town and did that. And that was their double date. And, as I'm just reading through these letters and these stories, people learn to adapt to the times. They learn to adapt to not having a lot, things that we take for granted and think that we're going to have forever. I mean, look at today's world where you have everything at your fingertips. You can Uber Eats, or DoorDash food wherever you are, just about at any time. And people get angry. If my favorite restaurant's not on DoorDash, what do I do? But you still have to be able to get it, right? Or if Amazon, Prime doesn't deliver the next day, you're frustrated because, like, man, I ordered that and I counted on that. God forbid you actually have to get off your duff in your seat and go find it at the store, but you still got money to pay for it. But during those tough times before, things just weren't available. You couldn't get sweets for a pie. You couldn't get sugar. A lot of times you couldn't get flour to make the crust. And if you went shopping for clothes, you had to take whatever was out there. You didn't have a choice of different colors and designs and prices. You bought what they had. And if it wasn't in your budget, you didn't buy it. You probably made it yourself. But the one thing that really stood out from those times wasn't just the fact that there was scarcity of stuff. It was how they came together and how they came together to support each other. There were many stories that I've read about how families would dine together at meals to share what they had. Because if you think of it individually, families may have not had enough, but if they did like a potluck, everybody could have something of, they could have variety. They could have something of what they wanted. And there would be more food available for people. And how people mended each other's clothes. Sissy had a tear in her clothes and she didn't have time to mend it. So she gave it to her, her friend's mom. And they did things back and forth for each other. And the community survived because the community was strong and it came together. And even though they lacked a lot of things, they still had love and they still had appreciation and they still had a togetherness of culture. And as I'm reading through these letters, the thing that I'm shocked most about is not the lack of what they had. It's what they have back then that we don't have now. And that's camaraderie and that's closeness and it's families sticking together, multi-generational families sticking together. And it's that attitude that we're just going to support each other, during these tough times and we'll make it through. We'll find a way. We may have a different, one of our buttons may be different on our shirt, but nobody criticizes anybody for it because they know that there may not be any buttons and you're lucky to have a button, or if you didn't come in the fanciest clothes, it's either because you didn't have the money or you couldn't find the goods because there weren't enough textiles. People just understood. In today's culture, I really, I look at the world around me and it's almost like if you're, it's funny watching the girls in videos saying, well, if you don't have $250,000, I don't want to date you. And I'm like, okay, if I had $250,000, I wouldn't date you with that attitude. And there've been periods of my life I made a ton of money, but I would never date someone like that. I would never go out with someone like that. But there are other things. People don't help each other as much. People don't volunteer as much. And, even though we've always been an individualistic culture, we're so individualistic now that I'm not sure that if my neighbors were starving in the apartment next to me, how many people would go to their rescue. It was funny. I had a new neighbor move in an apartment right across from mine, and he couldn't get into the apartment complex because his little his button didn't work. And this has been an issue in our apartment. It's a really nice apartment complex, but their gate codes are always screwed up. And he said, they give you a code to dial yourself, it'll dial your phone. I could have let myself in at the gate, but that didn't work. And so I ended up letting him in and just making sure, he's one of the residents. And he was really nice. And he's like, I'm so sorry. We just moved in, all that kind of stuff. And, we helped each other out. And that is just a little baby thing, but we helped each other out in that way. But most of the time I don't see that. I don't see people holding doors for each other anymore. I don't see people doing potlucks together anymore. Since I've become a single guy, I've had a lot of free time. And something I've shared with some of my closer friends is I go out a lot of times and I just do network meetings. Sometimes it's business, sometimes it's else, go out and meet people. I like to be social all the time. I like to go out. If I stay in my apartment too long, I get claustrophobia. But people now are whether I go play sports or whether I'm going to a business networking meeting or real estate investment conference, or I'm going to trivia night, or, whatever I'm going to do, people are a little bit more standoffish and skeptical of each other. And you just sense that people are not as connected. I think a lot of that had to do with the pandemic and the masks. One of my friends said that the masks had retarded his daughter's ability to speak, because at the time the pandemic happened, we were all wearing masks. She was in her developmental phase of learning to speak. And he says, she's now having trouble learning to communicate, and he blames that time period on. I think there were a lot of things that happened during that time period that affected us in ways that maybe we don't even realize, in our ability to relate to one another. So that's the biggest impact I got from those letters. Was back then people really supported one another, and they supported the troops, but they supported each other back at home in many, many ways. And you learn to get along, and you learn to work with people, and you shared. Not only did families share with each other, and multiple generations got together over Thanksgiving and didn't bitch about how many different houses they had to go to, like we do now. And I understand our lives are more complicated, but it was just a different time. And that really came out in the letters. And it really came out, the camaraderie and the togetherness, and how people buckled down. And my worry, just kind of summarize this thought before we move on in this video, my worry is, in the current state of the world and in the US, would we do the same? Are we going to do the same for our neighbors? Is it going to be like it was the last time? Because I think we're headed to, a major war. I think we're headed to a major recession. I think that's sitting right on the horizon. And my question is, how are we going to react this time? Is society going to be as close? Maybe that brings us all closer together. Maybe we buckle down like they did back then in the 30s and 40s and even the 50s. And, in the 50s, as we rebuilt our society, into the 60s and 70s, where we had so much that we were all, half the people were taking drugs, and, we lived a very soft lifestyle, only a couple of decades outside of having to live a very hard one. But the way that the people got through that, and the way that they, interacted, I'm hoping that we, when the tough times come again, because they come, it's just life. It's a cycle. It's the way it happens. When they come, are we going to be as together? I don't know that we are going to be as together. That does worry me a little bit. A lot of my friends who have the means have moved out into the fringes of the city, and the ones that really have the means are moving out into the boonies, and they're building cabins. And I'm not joking, like bug out places to go to. And I'm talking people with serious money. I'm not talking about conspiracy theorists. I'm talking about people of standing in the community with advanced degrees, doctorates, or business owners that make a crap ton of money, or building their bug out locations, or they're just leaving the city, they're retiring outside the city. And I think that everybody sort of has this sense, and I'm a very high intuition person, so I can sometimes sort of sense things in a way that aren't necessarily communicated directly. I try to do a great job of communicating very directly with you. I'm known as being a direct, to get to the punch, Rob. And I do that on purpose, but really my biggest strength is my intuition. And I'm intuiting through speaking with people and just seeing things go on, that there is an underlying level of distrust in society that maybe we haven't had in a long time, and divisiveness in society. And it'd just be interesting to see if we all come together. I think, I'd like to think during these Thanksgiving times that we will, and these holiday times that we will. But the interesting thing is, I think right after the holidays is where the stuff starts to hit the fan. And it's going to start slow, and everybody thinks it's normal, and it's going to go like that. And then the Fed's going to step in, and it'll kind of come up, and then it'll go like that. It's kind of like a dual waterfall. It's like going down the rapids, and then it gets calm, and then you may have small waterfall, and then you hit the big daddy. And once you hit the Big Daddy, it's a free fall, bam. And I think we're kind of at that stage where we're getting to the end of the rapids. We've had some rocky times, and we get to the point where we start getting to the waterfalls and then eventually the big drop. We're getting really close. And that's not just the numbers. You know, I'm a data head, but it's my intuition saying we're there. We're there. In the back of my mind, every day I wake up, the first thing I think of is we're there. We're there. We're there. And I don't know about you guys, but when I wake up from my dream state, I tend to have about 10 minutes of a lot of clarity. And I think that has to do with the ability of the subconscious to work through things and provide us insights into what's going on, problems in our life, so to speak, and things that are going on. And I think when you first wake up, you're still in that sort of waking up from your subconscious state where your subconscious is sort of speaking directly to your conscious, or at least your conscious is aware of the subconscious in a way that is typically not throughout the day. And so when I get that clarity, when I first wake up, that first 10 minutes, it's still in the house. I'm getting up at 5:36 every morning before most people. There's no road noise, nothing's going on. I just have that clarity. The first thing I think of is we're there, Rob. We're there. We're there. After 15 years of following this, we're there now. And it doesn't mean at 9 a.m. that morning, the stuff's going to hit the fan. But I mean, it means, relatively speaking, in time, we're there. And last thing I'll say on this is I believe that this might be the last normal, quote unquote, normal Thanksgiving that we have in our lives for a very long time. And by very long time, I mean it could be over a decade. And it could be that we start the slow descent and then a fast one, and then the war phase, and then the economic expansion phase. But to get back to where we are now may be over a decade. It may be a long time. The feelings of, you know, that we had the last few years, and especially before the pandemic, when that seemed to divide our culture a lot. If you haven't noticed, the pandemic seemed to stick, you know, like a wedge between our culture and just start, you know, it started shivving out different sections and dividing us into different groups in a lot of ways. So, but I think this will be the last normal Thanksgiving we have in a while. And so enjoy it. Really, you know, hug and love your families, because I think the tough times are right here on the other side of the holidays. And we're not going to a depression on January 1, but the point being, we're past the middle. We're past hump day in the cycle. We're past the point at which you go to the top of the peak, and then it just starts to, you know, we've gone to the top of the roller coaster. You're sitting on that roller coaster. You're looking down going, holy crapola. And then you hit the big boom. We're really close to that, I think, is where we are. So this may be the last normal holiday. So really, really enjoy it, because I don't think it's going to be like this for a number of years again. All right. So my Thanksgiving Day message is appreciate what you have. Understand that we're about to go through lean times. Build your networks. Get back together with your family if you can. Go local. Robert, who runs Crowbane, who's on our Twitter all the time, sometimes comes to our spaces on Mondays, talks about local, 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 local. He literally pounded Twitter this morning, delivering the local message. Find your local farmers, find your local coin dealers, find your local milk providers, find your local produce, your local auto guy, people that you can depend on. Your ability to network in this world with other people that can provide you something directly instead of going to these big corporates is going to be one of the keys to your survival. But also get together with your family, mend broken fences, things like that, because that's going to be very important. The people immediately around you, your little cocoon of support, is going to be so important. And I think we're going to go back to those times that I described in the letters that to my father during World War II, where people really band together. Because I think if you don't, I don't know how you're going to survive. And I don't care how much gold and silver you have. What are you going to spend the damn gold and silver on if you can't get stuff? You know, it's no good to be very rich in a poor world, because you may not survive. You may need to start interacting with the other people. You know, people that think that they're going to stand on a tower and above the fray. It's not the way it works. The fires in the forest are going to consume everything, if you will. So that's my Thanksgiving Day message. Enjoy this Thanksgiving. Enjoy this Christmas. It may be the last normal ones we have for a very, 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 very long time. So appreciate it, but use those opportunities to build goodwill as much as you can with your local networks. All right. Now that will be it for the Thanksgiving Day message. I want to talk a little bit of business. We still do have We have the store online. I'm going to talk about the store online here for just a moment. Let me get that shared up on the screen. We have done a lot towards setting our prices and being competitive. One of the things that people told me was, Rob, your price is a little bit higher than other people. I'm like, yeah, I'm a small dealer. Like, I mean, I can't sell at wholesale prices. And a lot of that has to do with compression. There's compression right now. There's one wholesaler selling kilo silver bars for 20 cents an ounce over spot. That's a wholesale price, but they're offering it to the retail. Why? Because retail's drying up. We're in the capitulation phase of retail. Sales have slowed down on everything, not just precious metals, but on the entire economy. You're going to see that data start to come out. I talked about it on Tuesday's video, how retail sales are slowing, even though we're in a peak period in which retail sales accelerate, but they're actually slowing, which means that the rate of deceleration is going to be larger than you anticipate, because while the numbers may not be negative 20%, the fact that there's any negativity whatsoever at this time of year when we're traditionally very robust in spending is a bad sign. So in any case, margins are being compressed, but what that's also doing is there's not as much product that's going to be available in the precious metals sector. When you compress margins like that, a lot of silver miners have shut down production, primary silver miners. A lot of wholesalers are consolidating and dumping inventory. A lot of retailers, dealers like me, are going out of business. Thank God, I have a good following, and knock on wood, so far I'm okay. But it's going to be tight. It's going to be tight for a while. That means there are good deals. And so one of the things I've done is I've tried to make better deals here. So on volume pricing, we've worked really hard to lower our prices. Overall, we think our prices are competitive. Now, gold's falling, so my prices will come down. The prices you see here on the video will actually be lower. But what I do is I've worked out deals with a couple of local wholesalers to where I can get stuff in volume, and I don't even have to keep it in stock. If there's somebody that comes across and they want a couple of gold ounces, or they want 50 or 100 ounces of silver, we can have it shipped directly from the wholesaler to you, or it can come to my store if you feel more comfortable with that, and then I can give it to you if that's what you want to do, if you're local. Or I can order it and then ship it to you from my place if you just want, you don't want them to have your address, you want me to, it doesn't matter. We'll arrange it, but we can get the metal to you at lower cost. So now I can compete with the big boys in the space because I have access to the same guys that they do in terms of wholesale pricing. So I will give you good deals on your precious metals if you need it. It will be, right now on my deals, I'm beating a lot of the really big guys. There's a couple of smaller guys that are competing with me, but for the most part, I've got the prices that the big guys now do on the bullion. So go to that volume pricing page every day. I try to refresh it in the morning every day, at least once, in the afternoon once. But at the prices you see there, you're not sure, just give me a call. I'll quote you. I just put that up there as like a bulletin board, but really just call me any point in time or email me at any point in time, or go to that button on that page where you can sign up on the Google form, and I'll call you back. And I'll get you the best deal according to spot rate at that moment at which you call. And as soon as you fund it, we'll lock it in and we'll get you good prices on metals. And I've done that because if I do the traditional retail route and just put stuff in the store and I'm just buying from the public or I'm buying from wholesalers, if that price goes down, I can't take a loss on every sale that I make. So what I've done is said, okay, let me work out a deal with these wholesalers. So if you guys need something, I can have it delivered at that spot price at that time with no price risk to me or them. We make a little bit of markup there to keep the store going, and you get it shipped directly to you, whether from me or from them. So if you're interested in that, and it can be at least, the minimum order is like $500 in silver and an ounce of gold. But we'd like to pass these savings on to people that are investing and want to do it, either on a regular basis or want to order at least, a little bit of product to allow us to pass on those savings. So I've got that. It's been up there for a while. I'm just making people aware. All right, that's going to do it for the commercial part. Again, to summarize, I have the storm at this point in time, probably last normal holiday season, the way it's been the last 30 or 40 years that we can all remember growing up. I think the stuff really hits it in 2024. The data says it, but my intuition also says it. Right now, retail capitulation phase, less spending going on. Even in the wealthier, that came out this week in CNBC, the higher end department stores, higher end stores are spending less. So people are starting to button down. And that's mainly a result of employment, replacing full-time jobs with part-time, and people having a harder time making ends meet. So that's coming. So we'll get through it, but I think it's going to lead to harder things, harder times. And, you know, I'm fortunate, I guess, in a way that my parents grew up during the Great Depression. My dad fought in the war. That as I'm reading through those letters and recounting those stories, I was able to prepare ahead of time. I saw this coming 15 years ago. And we're now here. We're sort of at D-Day in the economic markets, if you will. And so I had time to prepare. I don't know that everybody else has. It's why I do the videos, is to help out. So please enjoy your Thanksgiving, but know that harder times are coming, and just button down and prepare for that, and do what you got to do. And I think at the end of the day, you're going to be okay. But that is my Thanksgiving Day message. Thank you guys so much for being supporting the program, supporting the store, supporting me, but also coming together as a community. This community is very important. A lot of community building now is online versus in person, and there's nothing wrong with that. So just, you know, edify that community and reach out to each other in chat and things like that. Make your connections. This is a concentrated group of people that sees the same thing coming, and you don't see that when you go out in the world and you talk to people. Most people don't know what the hell is going on. So use this community to your advantage. Reach out to one another and support one another, because this community is more likely to want to talk about the things you want to talk about, to want to make the same preparations that you are. And hopefully, again, through our store, we're providing you value and things that you're going to need to make those preparations. All right. Thanks, guys. Till next time, Rob Kienzle, Gold Silver Pros. Have a very happy Thanksgiving.